Okay, I'm here with Moran, who's flown in for the Harbour Club. He's the first delegate to arrive, so I thought I'd sit him down and just have a quick chat with him about what his expectations were from the Harbour Club and what he was hoping to learn for it. So I guess first thing, if you want to give a bit of background about yourself and what your business has been, and yeah, any questions you have for me, really.
For sure. So I've been in the online world for almost 10 years. I had a very successful iPhone app company.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much everything online. Like I used to sell stuff on eBay since I'm like 18, 19, buying stuff in the local market and sell them for a few more bucks online.
Yeah.
E-commerce, software, all sorts of different stuff.
Okay.
And at some point I watched TV shows like Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, and I'm like, holy shit, I want to do those things. I don't want to be in the day-to-day menial tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out about people such as yourself, and I'm like, holy shit, that's what I want to do. I want to be around there, interacting with people, meeting people, and just be the big vision, kind of like buying businesses, selling businesses. It just sounds fun, and you just play with much more money as well.
Well, actually, it's a lot of what you've done before. It's the same skill set, just applied in a different way. So at the end of the day, a deal is done between two people, whether you're selling them a watch or a business. It's ultimately it comes down to fulfilling needs and overcoming objections and all the same kind of stuff. So yeah, it's logical to move up the entrepreneurial ladder and keep and keep developing. But so I mean, I presume you've seen some videos and stuff before now about the course. What were some of the things that you saw on there that you kind of said, oh, I want to know how that's done, or how do they do that bit, or
obviously, everything from how you even find those deals to how you get to a point where you buy those companies. And you mentioned, we pay £1 per deal. Yeah. And I'm like,
how does that work?
How would that work?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's obviously a broad topic, and we're going to spend the next 2 days talking about all of this kind of stuff. But how you find deals? I mean, there's other videos that I've done on some sourcing techniques, and obviously you'll learn a lot more tomorrow. But I think one of the key things is just changing the conversations you're having with people. So typically when you're in that running a business mentality, your first thought is about how you can get your next customer. If you shift that to your best customer is the guy that buys your business from you, so you start to have a conversation at a more strategic level, you'll find it's the same kind of the same people, but the conversation changes. So if you start to sit around with a group of people and say that you invest in businesses, that you buy and sell businesses, you'll find that you'll have conversations about that. If you say you're in internet marketing, you'll have conversations about that. It's just that how you define yourself thing is a really arbitrary thing that you've arrived at from a really complex path you've gone through on your life. So why we answer the question the way we do is a really interesting point in its own in its own way. But yeah, I would say positioning yourself as somebody that wants to do deals is actually a great way of attracting deals. So then the next part there was how you do a deal for £1. Well, okay, the pound thing is the legal requirement. So when you have a contract, there are 4 components to a contract. There's an invitation, an offer, an acceptance, and a consideration. And the pound is the consideration. So you have to make some payment in order to complete a deal, in order to make a deal legal. So that's where the pound comes in. In fact, you don't really get the business for £1. You give the person some value. You give the person what they're looking for. So everybody has different motivations, and it's about you achieving those motivations. And I'll give you a really simple example, which is a merger. A merger is a great example of a no money down transaction. And the way a merger actually works, I mean, if you think about it, you think that these two things kind of join together. But in fact, what happens is you use an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. It's a limited company, a limited liability company that you set up just for this purpose. And so the limited company has its own shares and its own identity. And effectively, you swap the shares of the two companies into shares in the top company. Yeah. So let's just say that both companies are identical. So each one is turning over 2.5 million a year, and they make a 10% net profit. So you've got 2.5 million with 250,000 profit, and 2.5 million with 250,000 profit. You then become 50-50 in the company upstairs, which has 5 million in turnover and 500,000 in profit. So there's a number of reasons why you might do that transaction. One of them is that big is beautiful. Bigger companies are worth more than smaller companies. So you'll get an increase in the value of the business just by making it bigger. The other reason is it's great for succession planning. So if you want to get a person to run the whole thing so that you're not selling yourself with the business, the best place to find a person that knows how to run a business like yours is to find someone that's already running a business like yours. So get the talent with the merger. You'll also find best practice. So best practice is you can have turnover and profit, but the way you arrive at that profit can be really different in both companies. So some of them could be really good at marketing, so their cost per acquisition is lower. Some of them could be really good at operations, so their cost of delivery is lower. Yeah. If you can extract those best practices, you can possibly get 2 + 2 = 6 instead of 2 + 2 = 4. So there's a load of advantages for putting them together, but really a merger gives you quick scale, quick increase in value, succession planning, best practice, and then something you can sell. I always say to people, don't get bogged down in the integration of the businesses. You can keep 2 separate offices and 2 separate accounts teams and all of that stuff for now, because when you start to integrate that, you can find there's a lot of cost and a lot of loss in profit while you do that integration. Mm-hmm. So I actually prefer to sell the upside of the integration to the next guy. So you literally say, hey, look, here's a business that's turning over 5 million. It has 500 grand of profit, but hey, it's got 2 offices. It's got 2 accounts teams. Imagine if you could, reduce all of those duplications. So does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the other guy gets the benefit of being 50% of something bigger. Yeah. So that's why he would come and join. But there's no money changing hands. So both parties end up with more than they started with, but without any cash.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, obviously there's so many questions I could ask you now.
Yeah.
Like even just Toby, your partner. Mm-hmm. So I kind of been involved with him and what you guys doing together with the roll up and taking the group public. Yeah. Like obviously, I'm sure everyone would love to hear about that as well.
Yeah. Okay. So the merger is what happens between 2 companies. But obviously you can create something really big using this same strategy. So there's no reason why you couldn't get several companies together and put them all under that same umbrella and create something really big. 20, 30, 40, 50 million is very achievable. And so one of the roll-up strategies that we use is something called a virtual merger. And the virtual merger is where you use that same SPV, but you'll get maybe 5 or 6 people together and you'll say, look, will you all come and join this group if we can create this exit for you? Now, the exit could be to a trade buyer who's already agreed to do it. So one example of that, we had a company in the US that really wanted a seminar business in the UK. Now, seminar businesses in the US are really mature. There's loads of them that do more than $10 million. Yeah. In the UK, they tend to be one-man band, a guy with a product and some revenue and some profit. Not really something you can sell because you take him out of the equation, there's no business. So basically, these Americans had 2 attempts at coming to buy something in the UK. And had always been let down because the business brokers or the buy side brokers didn't really understand what they wanted. So they ended up meeting the conference organizer for the Ford annual general meeting and, just not the kind of seminar businesses they wanted to meet with. And then I met up with them and basically said, what are you looking for? And they said it needs to be about 10 million in revenue and it needs to be in the seminar space. And I said, I've got the perfect thing for you. And I then rang up a load of people I knew in that space, invited them out here actually to Mallorca, gave them a pitch, took them out for dinner, got everyone drunk.
It always helps. Yeah.
Exactly, got everybody to sign some heads of terms before they're drunk. And then went back to the Americans and we were able to show them, look, here's, it was around 11 million in revenue. We were operating in 12 countries. We had 300,000 people on the database. I'm saying like we. This didn't exist, it wasn't me at all. I never started any of these businesses. So but we managed to create a structure that sounded really good. Lots of customers, lots of products, lots of different people delivering it. So we got away from this one speaker-centric kind of business and created something really cool. The total value of that was about 35 million, and my take would be 7 million on exit from nothing, from literally sitting some people down and discussing it with them.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's quite a cool strategy. But then the roll-up strategy that we're doing now, which is a tweak on that, is instead of using a trade buyer at the end of it, we use an IPO. So we actually say to everybody, would you come and join this party if we could publicly list and therefore get you this valuation? Now, you'll often hear me say that two of the biggest drivers of shareholder value are scale and liquidity. So the scale we get by putting a number of these companies together, so we end up with 20, 30 million in revenue, and the liquidity comes from making it public. So last year I did 3 reverse ins, which is one way of making a company public, which is where you find a company that's already on the market and you swap your shares for their shares. But this year we're doing some IPOs. We have a couple in the pipe at the moment. One is a marketing services business and one is a property services business. Effectively we put the group together and then we publicly list it. And therefore everybody in the group can take some money off the table. They can also take some stock in the public listing so they can go forwards. And they also get this much bigger valuation than they would have if they just looked at a normal trade sale. And they get to do something interesting. I think an IPO is on the entrepreneur's bucket list now. You want to tick that one off. So they all get to tick one more thing off the bucket list.
That's awesome.
So.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Harbour. I'm going to talk today about growing your business by acquisition. I had an epiphany a few years ago when effectively I grew my business by a year's worth of sales in an afternoon, and it didn't cost me any money and I didn't have to take any risks with sales and marketing type techniques. But before I get into that, if we go back to the start, growing up I was always quite entrepreneurial. In fact, I started a business when I was 14 years old and I left school when I was 15 to go and pursue that business. In fact, I went spectacularly bust when I was 19, which is a great lesson in humility. I think everyone needs a good kick in the nuts when they're a bit young and cocky. It was a really useful experience, and actually it's really helped me in later life to be able to empathize with businesses that are in trouble, because I know exactly what it feels like to be in their shoes. So basically I was running businesses like this. I was always a firm believer that if you wanted to be successful, you had to start a business and you had to work really hard. And I did sacrifice everything. I put in the blood, the sweat, and the years into growing my businesses at the expense of almost everything else in my life. And it was great fun. It's a rite of passage. I think everyone should start a business and have that experience. But one of the things I realized, I was growing a telecoms company at the time, and we'd grown very quickly organically, so I think in our first year we did a few 100,000. The next year we doubled that. The year after that we doubled it again. An interesting thing happened. We obviously appeared on the radar of quite a few of our competitors. Now our competitors were looking at buying us out. Because obviously they could add our revenue to their business, but they didn't have to take all of our costs. So they could get rid of our office and our staff and everything else and just add the profitable revenue, which meant that they would get a much bigger upside from buying our business than they would than we would get from our own business. So I basically spent every week having meetings with these various different telecoms company bosses who were trying to pitch me, and that's the only way to describe it really, pitch me on why I should sell to them and how I should do a deal. And the reason it was a pitch was because there wasn't going to be any money up front. All of these deal structures were quite creative. They were all targeting things that I needed and wanted. And that would help fulfill other needs, but ultimately all the jam was tomorrow, so there wasn't going to be anything up front. Now, fortunately, I had quite a few of these meetings. I think too many people are negative on the phone when people ring up and don't have meetings. But I think I always took the view that it's part of my business education to meet as many people as possible and talk about what it is they're looking to do. And sure enough, after a while, what happened was instead of me having 2 or 3 opportunities to choose from, I ended up with sort of 15 opportunities, and then it made me start to think about everything a little bit differently. And the thought process I had was pretty much, well, at the time I didn't have any money at all, so maybe I could buy a business, maybe I could use the same type of strategy they were doing in order to grow my telecoms company. So I decided to just go out there and start talking about wanting to find a business. Now, a really interesting thing happens when you go out and start telling people what you want. Lots of little signposts pop up that weren't there before. In fact, all the same conversations you used to have, suddenly with this new pair of spectacles on, there's new opportunities. And it didn't take long before I started to get opportunities to talk to other telecoms companies about the possibility of buying them. And I got a few slaps around the face, from not being able to come up with any cash. But sooner or later, I found a 13-year-old telecoms company that was based in the UK. It had some great customers. Nintendo was one of its customers. And I was able to structure a deal with him because he had particular motivations that I was able to satisfy. I was able to structure a deal with him where I bought the business for no cash up front whatsoever. And also I didn't have any borrowing. I didn't borrow money from the bank. I didn't borrow money from the guy that was selling me the business. I didn't have to take on investors' capital to complete this deal. And like I say, I effectively grew the business by a year's worth of revenue in an afternoon. And I had an epiphany. I don't need to start a business and work really hard. I don't need to put all the blood, sweat and years in that I've been putting in before. I can just do, I don't have to run the marathon. I can just do the last 10 yards and I still get the trophy. And that was a really important epiphany for me. And it suddenly made me realize that, maybe I'd been doing it wrong all these years. Or not wrong, but just not the right way. So, and the funny thing was, now when I started looking back at all the books and all the things that I'd read before, with this new idea that you can just run the last 10 yards of the marathon and still get the trophy, I realized that everybody that I thought was telling me to start a business and work really hard, they'd all made their money doing deals. In fact, all of the dragons on Dragon's Den, bought or sold businesses as the way that they accelerated their success and their wealth. So it was almost like, it was a complete paradigm shift. I completely changed the way that I looked at business. And it was around about this time, I basically, having had that epiphany, I went on a little bit of a rampage and I ended up buying lots and lots of businesses. And in the space of 18 months, I had built up a sort of mini empire of businesses turning over about £13.5 million a year on a sort of monthly run rate. We had about 135 staff, all based around the Hertfordshire area in the UK. I became extremely busy doing all of that. I bought a seminar company, was one of the businesses I bought, and this seminar company taught people various business skills and business techniques. And out of the back of that, I kind of thought, well, how would I teach people what I do? And it was actually at one of their seminars I started to write a little script down of how I would do a training course. One of the first things I realized is actually to learn how to buy a business, you really need to buy a business, because it's an experiential thing. So I titled this course The Harbour Club, and I wrote down all the things that would make it interesting for the participant. So how would they source deals? How would they effectively continuously source deals? Because they're not where you think they are. They're not with accountants or insolvency practitioners or people like that. How would they get to have a meeting with these people? Because if you ask the average entrepreneur how's business, generally it's their best month ever, isn't it? So you need to be able to have an honest conversation with the entrepreneur about how things are going and what it is. They then needed to understand the no money down deal structures that you can use, because there's lots of different ones. In fact, on the Harbour Club course, we have 6 core no money down strategies. There's actually kind of 7 or 8 altogether, but there's 6 core no money down strategies that we work through, which shows things like how I was able to buy an air conditioning company for £1, where we met them at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 5 p.m. the same day, we're being introduced to the staff as the new owner, and then go on and sell that later for 6 figures. How we bought a furniture manufacturer for £1, 100%, and again we're able to turn that around and sell that on in a very short space of time, and a whole load of other stuff. So a call center business. We bought a gym and spa. It was a health club. 15,000 square foot health club that cost 3.2 million to fit out just a few years before, that we were able to buy lock, stock and barrel. And actually the way the deal was structured, we ended up £25,000 in front after the deal was completed. So there's some really interesting techniques that we've stuck in there, and everything is backed up with real case studies. And not only do we use the real case studies with the real company names, but we also give you the documents that we used when we completed those deals. So all of the contracts and spreadsheets and questionnaires and things like that we've had to do. Now, people often ask, how do you buy a business with no money? And my facetious answer is you need to start with no money and try and buy a business, a bit like I did with that first telecoms company, because necessity is the mother of invention. So I bundled all of that into this course called the Harbour Club, to give people the complete package on how to do things. And the Harbour Club's been running very successfully since 2009. The references and things that people give us for it are always incredibly flattering and very positive. But actually quite a few people just want to come along to learn how to grow their business by acquisition. So they're not so interested in all the turnaround techniques and the insolvency tactics and the exit side of it. Really in the beginning what they're looking to do is what I did in the first place, which is to grow that company by a year's worth of revenue in an afternoon. Now, in order to grow by acquisition, actually one of the most important things is how you find motivated sellers, because these people aren't always in distress, but they are motivated. So you need a consistent tactic that will get you those people. Now, they're not with insolvency practitioners, they're not with accountants, they're not with business brokers. So where do you find businesses that actually aren't really for sale, that you can then put these deals together with? The next thing is then how you have the meeting with them, so that you can have a proper conversation about getting a deal done. And then we go into the sort of legal protection, how you protect yourself from not getting yourself into trouble. You wouldn't like to buy a company that's potentially insolvent and then it destroy the business that you have already. Now, it's very simple not to get into trouble like that, but as long as you know how. And then the next thing is the deal structuring. So how do you actually put a deal together where you're not borrowing money and you're not paying anything up front for the business? So we go through all the systems you need to do that. And then how do you reduce all your upfront costs in doing the deal? So we show you how you do it without any legal fees, without any accounting fees, without any cost of due diligence. We have a really smart system for taking all the due diligence costs out of doing the deal. We tell you exactly how I bought businesses, how I found them, how we got the deal done, the whole thing. And then if you feel that you want to take everything a step further, you can come on one of my Harbour Club courses where we'd fill in all the gaps in terms of how you do the financial engineering, the 7 steps to fixing a company's cash flow. For example, we bought an air conditioning company that hadn't paid its payroll for 2 months. It was £10,000 overdrawn. We were able to fix that within about 6 weeks, so that all the payroll was caught up and it constantly had cash in the bank. We bought another business that was £85,000 overdrawn. Its payroll was due in a week, and the overdraft was personally guaranteed by the owners. So the deal we did there was, if we could get you off the personal guarantee and we can pay the payroll, could we have the company? To which they said yes, and then we used a really clever tactic, which meant we didn't have to put any money in ourselves, but we managed to get the overdraft back to zero, get the bank guarantee cancelled, and we were also able to get the payroll met on time, and ended up with the company, which we were later able to sell for 6 figures. So that's one of the case studies that we use in the course. So if you'd like to find out more, have a look at it, see how that works, and then maybe I'll see you on a Harbour Club one day in the future. Thank you for listening. So I've also got, I did a webinar a few months ago, and I've also got all the emails that people sent in with questions about the Harbour Club. So I'll run through those now, and that hopefully might answer some of the questions you're thinking about whilst watching this video. So the first question here is, does it work outside of the UK? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in the slides as I go through, I have a little picture of a globe in the corner of each slide. Where the globe is there, it means it's a global strategy. It will work in any country. And on about 6 out of 100 slides, there's no globe, as in it's a UK only tactic. So you've got many tactics that you can use in other countries, and I've taught the course in Asia and in Europe. So what skills do I need to make it work? Actually, you probably don't need any skills, but being likable, being a good kind of salesperson is probably quite helpful. The strategy we teach is very much a kind of rapport-based strategy, and therefore, it's good that you can engage with people and get them to go along with things for you. So. Apart from just buying and selling, what else could I use your tactics to do? So I teach specifically to buy and sell companies, but most people who come on the course, in fact, I'd probably say only 20% of people who come on the course end up using it for actually buying and selling. Most people use it for something slightly different. So, for example, you can use it for consultancy around business turnarounds and profit improvement, cash improvement, those sorts of things. You can use it to grow your business by acquisition. We've had quite a few people come along because they want to exit their own company and want to make sure they get it right the first time. We've had other people come along who want to try and fix the business they're in now. They've looked at some of the turnaround consultants and the so-called sort of business doctors, and they're all charging a lot more than the cost of this course to try and come in and fix your business. And a lot of the time that doesn't work. So people just really want to know have the ammunition to be able to do that sort of stuff themselves. So yeah, absolutely. Although I teach you to buy and sell, there's thousands of other applications for the same information. So next one, is there a cheaper way of doing this? Well, there's lots of ways that you can learn how to buy and sell businesses. You can do it the way I did it, which is just go out and start trying to do deals. Obviously, I made quite a few mistakes in the early days. Many of these I go through in the case studies on the Harbour Club course. And those were reasonably expensive mistakes, more in terms of the time and opportunity cost than actual cash cost. So doing the course very much stops you bumping your head on the same things that I bumped my head on. But also the other ways that you could get kind of deals done, I don't think would save you any money or get you the deals for no money down. If you approach brokers, you tend to find the businesses are overvalued. If you approach insolvency practitioners, it's too late. The businesses are already in insolvency and can't be saved. In fact, just recently we came across a printing company that had got an administrator in just 1 week before, and now that means that whole business is destroyed. The man's going to lose his livelihood, his personal guarantees are going to be triggered, so he may well lose his house. All the people who work there are going to lose their jobs. If they just came to us 1 week earlier, we could have got him real value for that business and saved all of the employees and saved all the customers from losing out on the money they paid. So the timing is really, really critical as to when you find these. You need to find these opportunities before they get to that sort of stage. Just on the cost side, if you were to engage a corporate finance team or a lawyer or an accountant, quite often they will ask for a significant deposit of funds up front before they get started. And often that deposit would be far greater than the cost of coming along and doing the Harbour Club. What happens if I don't like the course? Well, if you come along and do the course, we actually have a full money-back guarantee. So on the first day, you come and listen to the content. If you don't think you're learning anything new, if you don't think there's anything there for you, you can just step out. You don't do the second day, and we just give you a full refund, and you can fly home. Since we've been doing this in 2009, we've had well over 100 people do the course, and nobody has cashed in on day 2. Everybody's always wanted to find out, and we have some amazing testimonials about the Harbour Club, which I'm sure you can see. We've got some on video and some in writing, so you can see all the different views people have about having done the course. The next question, if you don't retain the SME owner in the business, don't you quickly lose the important customer relationships? It's an interesting question, actually. Many business owners think that they have all the, they have sort of customer ownership, but we specifically target businesses that are more than 500,000 a year in turnover, and normally up to about 5 million in turnover. And what you tend to find is that if a business is, 1 or 200,000, then yes, it tends to be quite sort of owner-centric in terms of, they deal with everything. But as you get above 500,000, you tend to find they've already disseminated a lot of the responsibilities within the business, and that therefore there's a bit more inertia there. In fact, quite often, even a business owner can think they can take customers elsewhere, and often the customer just wants continuity, and keeping the status quo is much more important. I used to joke when I had a telecoms company that my biggest competitor was apathy, because actually most people just can't be bothered to leave their current supplier and come over to you, even if you're cheaper and better and faster and stronger. It's very hard to win those customers over. When you buy a business and you buy a customer base, you benefit from that same apathy the wrong way, the other way round. So effectively, your customers don't leave you as much as you think they possibly could, unless you do something really, really bad. So next question is, what does a typical deal look like? Well, I've done over 40 deals now, and I wouldn't say there's anything, any sort of median deal structure. What I've tried to do on the Harbour Club is break down some consistencies in the deals in terms of what a good deal looks like, in terms of sort of size and location and industry and those sort of things. And then I've also tried to break down some of the deal structures so that you end up with some sort of template cookie cutter deal structures you can go out and use to get deals done without any money down. So they fall broadly into kind of 6 categories of no money down structure. And there's some really quite creative things in there as well that will enable you to do some really clever deals. Somebody else here asks, what's the difference between a pre-pack and a Phoenix? Well, a pre-pack is just a pre-packaged administration. So a business goes into administration in order to seek a sale of the going concern, and a pre-pack is just where you agree to buy the business before it goes into administration. And a Phoenix is where a business effectively closes down and starts up again, usually straight away with the same directors, same shareholders, same premises, same product, same name, all that kind of stuff. We don't do either of those. We don't do pre-packs and we don't do Phoenix. We have much more interesting clever deal structures we can use. However, on the course we do take you through what the definitions of those are and tell you what a pre-pack is and how one is done. And I give you a couple of case studies of pre-packs I did do in the past, just so you have a better general knowledge around this topic if other people are talking to you about it. So is it a help or a hindrance to buy a business engaged in things you love or love to do or are interested in? Yeah, it's a good question. Basically, I describe myself as sector agnostic in that I will deal with any sector, and I find business in general quite interesting. There's one argument that says if you're really good at whatever the business does, you might find yourself getting operationally sucked in and doing the thing it does on a day-to-day basis. Whereas if you don't know what the business does, you'll take a much more pragmatic, black and white view to how you fix the business's problems. Fundamentally all businesses are the same. You just have to get more money to come in than goes out. And if you take that as the kind of core focus instead of getting too caught up in what the product is and what the product offering is and that sort of stuff, actually you'll find it much easier to do these kind of very simple buy and sell deals. The next question is, what businesses have you typically bought and sold? Well, a bit like the last question, there's not really a typical business. I've bought everything from a health club to a music school to a IT company, a telecoms company, really a whole range of things. I'm an opportunist. If there's a deal to be done, I'm a deal junkie, so I'll get the deal done. Next one is, how much time does one have to devote to these M&A activities in order to make it a success? I think like everything in life, the more you put in, the more you get out. And the more time you spend doing it, the better you'll get at it as well. And a lot of it is about the confidence to do these deals rather than the ability to do the deals. Obviously, when I started out, I was kind of brimming with confidence, and I think that was what really helped me get the first deals done. I know that doesn't always come naturally to everybody else, which is why I try and teach the skills that can give you the confidence. But at the end of the day, you know, repetition is the mother of learning. You have to get used to repeating the same kind of pitch and the same kind of ideas before you get into a sort of a rhythm of being congruent and believable when you're saying these things. The time typically, I mean, when I started out, I was running a full-time business, so my M&A activity had to wrap around the business that I was doing because I was growing my business through acquisition. So it's definitely possible to do while you're still running a business. But I think once you see all of the strategies laid out before you, you'll probably decide that you want to devote quite a bit of time to it, because basically it's a lot more fun than working for a living. So and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. Next question, is it better to look at companies that are already in administration or in the winding up process? No, absolutely not. So we have to find businesses that are way before they get to the stage of being already into insolvency. In fact, finding businesses that are already insolvent or already have lots of county court judgments and things like that can be a real handicap. We need to find people much earlier on in the process, which is what my whole sourcing system really focuses around. How do you find businesses that aren't necessarily for sale but are already in trouble and probably don't think there's much of a solution for their trouble other than closing the doors? So it's really, that's the sweet spot, finding these businesses. What if you wanted to keep the companies you acquire and make them a cash generator? Or for a bigger project, could you target those kind of businesses? Yeah, there's lots of the structures we use actually are perfectly okay for using in normal, stable state, profitable businesses. They don't have to be turnarounds and they don't have to be cash strapped. You know, so yeah, you can use the tactics to do bigger deals, and you can keep them and take cash out of them. I think one of the things that I allude to on the course is that was my strategy, and I don't do it anymore. And that is because I had the sort of second epiphany, which is you really make money when you sell a business, not when you're running a business. And when you sell a business, you get that time and that capital. And that's what really makes the difference in your entrepreneurial journey. So I went through exactly that thought process, and I ended up buying lots of companies and running lots of companies simultaneously for the cash flow. And I think I learned the hard way that it's much better to buy and sell. And I share that experience with you so that hopefully you don't have to go through that whole learning curve yourself. Okay, the next question, it's quite a long one. So it says, Jeremy, with reference to the webinar, I hear the bit about no money down. My question is this. I assume that in some cases you take personal guarantees over from people, so there is no money down. But if the fix isn't made, then there is the potential to be called upon these guarantees. And do these guarantees rely on the creditworthiness history of the buyer? It's funny that lots of people really think that there are liabilities that we take on when we buy these businesses. There absolutely aren't. We don't sign any guarantees. When you buy a limited company, the company's liability is limited to its share capital, which is the pounds that you've paid to buy the business. So we really do, one of the things we talk about on the course is how you de-risk the acquisition from a reputational perspective, from how you protect yourself legally from any potential legal infringements, and also, of course, how you make sure you don't take on any debt or take on any risk of debt. Just out of interest, I mean, if a bank has a personal guarantee on a business, by you signing a guarantee, that won't relieve the original person of the personal guarantee. You'll just become an additional guarantor. So no, all of the tactics we teach don't require borrowing and don't require taking on anybody else's risk of debt or risk of borrowing. So the next one, could you use the tactics to buy companies in the USA? As I said before, there's kind of 6 slides out of 100 that have UK only tactics. The rest of it is global. Basically, if you have a legal system, then the tactics probably work. So the next question is, what is the percentage of people who end up being successful after the course? It's actually very difficult to answer that question because I probably keep in touch with about 20% of the people that go through the course, because other people want to go off and do things on their own. Some people don't want to be admit that the tactics that they're engaging in, they've learnt on a training course. They want to do it on their own. Other people are more than happy to joint venture with me and do deals with me. But one thing I would say is there's probably only a smallish percentage that actually do it exactly the way that I teach it. A lot of people use it for for a whole range of different tactics. But certainly, I'm doing a number of deals every year as joint ventures with people that have done the Harbour Club. So there's lots of people out there doing these kind of deals now. Next question is, on average, how long does it take previous delegates to complete a deal after attending? Well, the fastest deal is 12 days. So somebody completed their first deal 12 days after the course, and we've got a number of people that have done a deal within a month of finishing the course. But I wouldn't say that's an average. So there isn't really a statistical average. We are launching a Hall of Fame attached to our members part of our website, which will show you, the kind of top 3 in a whole range of things like the fastest deals, biggest deals, most deals, all those kind of things. But yeah, lots of people go on and do stuff within the first month of getting back, but there's not really an average. Some people take a bit longer. The goal of the Harbour Club is to try and buy a business within 6 months of leaving the course, and I think that's a very, very achievable